What's going on, everybody? I'm Matt Harmon. Welcome to the Yahoo Fantasy Forecast, and it is a hell of a day to talk ball. We have an electric Week 12 Sunday slate to go over with you. We've got Chris Allen back in the saddle this week. We've got all kinds of overtime performances, big-time showings from serious contenders, some fantasy surprise players, some fantasy disappointments. Again, a ton of exciting stuff to get into, and I'm trying to hype myself up for all of that because before we get to Chris, before we get to the Week 12 Sunday recap, we've got to do a solo recap here of Sunday Night Football, and frankly, it's not that exciting. It's not that interesting of a game, but it is Rams 34, Buccaneers 7 here to talk through. Felt like a sad night tonight for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll get to them in just a moment because we will talk about the winners here first, as we always do. Again, the Rams, they're just freaking incredible. They're one of the best teams, if not the best teams in the NFL right now. Great tweet from producer Colin, I believe, shared this with our chat before the show. Sean McVay now owns the highest point differential in the NFL. Not only that, it's the highest point differential through 12 weeks of his head coaching career. Again, you could very much argue that this is the best Rams team we've seen in his tenure here. And remember, they obviously have a Super Bowl trophy. They have many other very good teams during his stretch here. But I really think this team in Los Angeles this year is the final form of a lot of what I think has been building in Los Angeles lately. It's the best version of Matthew Stafford I think we've seen throughout his career, and he has a long, storied, excellent career. He adds 3 more touchdowns to his season total this year. He hasn't thrown an interception in frickin' forever. He is, again, one of these rare quarterbacks that is just money in fantasy football. A quarterback one you can start. It's literally saving one of my salary cap teams that was in complete hell, was a complete mess at the quarterback spot, but I picked him up off waivers and I've been starting him every single week since early in this season. And he's been one of those rare guys that, despite the fact that he does not have any rushing upside to his game, he is getting there because he is unbelievable from a passing perspective. He's unbelievable from a touchdown perspective. And you saw it once again tonight. He throws 2 touchdowns to Davante Adams here on 8 targets, 5 catches, 62 yards. Man, it feels like Davante Adams was always sort of destined for this role late in his career. Adams, in my opinion, is one of, if not the best wide receiver since I've been doing this professionally. If you just go over, I started charting receivers for reception perception in 2014 and obviously up to this current season. And Adams, I think his peak is better. It's right up there with Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown not really doing wide receiver stuff at this point, if you've missed it. But Adams, obviously, he started out with one of the worst players in reception perception his first 2 seasons. That's where he started. He's since grown into being one of the best players, again, of this era. But he's not that guy anymore. Let's be serious. He's obviously not the player that he was at the peak of his powers when he was truly wide receiver 1 in the NFL. He's not that guy, but he was always seemingly destined for this exact role that he's in right now as an X-receiver for a really good offense that is just unstoppable in the red zone. The fade touchdown in this game, just beautiful release off the line of scrimmage. If you're looking at it from the broadcast angle, when you're seeing the cornerback's back, you don't even know how much separation is there. And then he has a quarterback who just could put it up as shoot a basketball, and that ball just lands in his hands for Davante Adams. And it all is possible because of the release off the line of scrimmage. He is still one of the best press coverage receivers in the NFL because he is a truly elite, a special technician off the line. That's why he's able to score these touchdowns. So he's able to be this red zone weapon. He might not just be putting up these massive yardage totals is Davante Adams, but he's going to continue to put touchdowns in the box. Like, that's why I think Boone and I talked about him a few weeks ago, maybe like a month ago at some point. Like, was he a fantasy sell high because he's living off touchdowns? My contention there was he's not going to stop scoring touchdowns. He was brought to Los Angeles to do this. We've talked about, regardless of the personnel package, whether it's 13, whether it's 12, whatever, he's going to lead the way in terms of plays in terms of snaps, in terms of routes, because he's always on the field as that X receiver. Tonight, he runs a route on 88.9% of the dropbacks, which led the team. 32 routes in this game. So really good to see for Davante Adams. 3 end zone targets. As I said, 2 touchdowns. It's just going to be every single week for Davante Adams. So nothing's changing there. I will say, if we were looking at changes, we mentioned a lot of the personnel packages for the Los Angeles Rams and how that had kind of, shifted some of the usage, right? Shifted what we could expect from Puka Nacua, right? And just what they have been doing from a personnel perspective. What were the Rams doing? Because they were just throwing out so much 13 personnel. In this week 12 here, the Rams barely play any 13 personnel. 3.6% of their snaps. Now, obviously, no Tyler Higbee. He's on injured reserve. That's a big detail. He's their kind of veteran, stalwart guy. They have Colby Parkinson. They have exciting rookie Terrence Ferguson. They have Davis Allen, who's a nice role player. But without Tyler Higbee, you figured there was going to be some change. When I wrote this whole article about Puka Nacua earlier this week, at some point, the league is moves and counter moves. When do they get to that counter move? Well, they specialize in 13. That's going to go away at some point. They're not just going to be in 13 personnel, 30, 35, 40 to damn near 50% of their snaps like they were at some weeks. Sorry to the football nerds out there. It's not going to happen. Well, they show the counter move here tonight. Again, 3.6% of plays in 13 personnel, and that allowed Puka Nacua to jump back up to an 86% route participation. 11 targets, team high, 7 catches, 97 yards. We're back. Okay, so that kind of, is this a concern for Puka Nacua? It's a concern if it was going to stay like that. Was it going to stay like that forever? No, it's not. That's why he's still a top receiver. I don't know where you want to slot him in rest of the season rankings. There's a lot of really good receivers right now. But if he's going to come out there and run a route on 86% of the dropbacks, it's going to be totally fine. Average over 3 yards per route like he always does. So good to see Puka Nacua get going there. Absolutely electric. 39 snaps and 11 personnel. That's what this team does. Moves and counter moves, baby. You're going to show us looks out of 13. Cool. Now we're going to show it out of 11. We're going to win either way. We're going to be the most efficient offense in the NFL. That's what the Rams do. That's great to see. Those are kind of the big takeaways from the Rams. I don't really know much else. Don't really have much else to say here. The run game doesn't really get going. Tampa Bay obviously is really good at shutting down the run. Nobody had a run longer than 10 yards in this game, and that was Blake Corum, who had 7 carries. Kyron Williams had 12. So we continue to see that kind of split there for these backs. I think you still start Kyron every single week as a fantasy RB2, but Blake Corum nipping at his heels a little bit, that is a small problem if you're still expecting him to be that kind of running back one. With that, though, let's flip this over to the Buccaneers side, because obviously I think it's a little more interesting what's going on over there. Baker Mayfield left the game at the end of the first half, does not return in the second half with a shoulder injury, arm in a sling, left shoulder for him. X-rays come back negatives, going to undergo an MRI on Monday, so we'll see with Baker Mayfield. It's a bummer because remember how the season started for Mayfield? Absolutely on fire, was in MVP conversations, which, by the way, MVP conversations in the first 6 weeks mean nothing, but that was just how well he was playing. It was like, man, is Baker going to have one of those seasons? Tez Johnson's here. They're chanting MVP for me. No, they're chanting for Baker Mayfield because that's how good he was. That's how good he was to start the season. And I don't bring this up to kind of pile on here after he got hurt, but I think it's worth remembering, and just when we're talking about this Bucs team and where they go from here and maybe where they go next season, that we had started to see some cracks in the foundation for this team, even like well before this week, well before the Baker Mayfield injury. Since week 7, so week 7 to 12, 33 quarterbacks had taken at least 100 dropbacks. Among those quarterbacks, Baker Mayfield ranked 31st in EPA per dropback and 32nd in adjusted yards per attempt. I know he's been dealing with injuries. He's maybe been banged up this whole time, but it's been a long time since we've seen the Bucs passing game. And obviously EPA per dropback, and frankly, any football stat is not like one player isolating. I'm not sitting here saying this is all Baker Mayfield's fault. But like when we're having conversations about why did Emeka Egbuka fall off? He has 8 targets in this game. He catches 3 for 32, only 1 first down on the night. When we're having conversations about that, obviously I've added the theories about, hey, extra defensive attention. You're not exactly thinking about, hey, where's Tez Johnson lining up or whatever. When we're talking about, hey, we're showing the stat here, he's been held to under 10 PPR points in all these games recently. It's been a long time since we've seen Emeka Egbuka consistently popping off. You have to consider the fact that this passing offense has not been that unit that it was to start the season. And that has certainly affected the number one receiver here, which is Emeka Egbuka, 93% route participation in this game. Only 19.3 snaps in the slot. That has also been a problem here. Like Chris Godwin coming back, he was a 43% player and he was mostly a slot guy, which I think is right for Chris Godwin. I mean, and obviously Chris Godwin from a fantasy standpoint here does nothing, 2 catches, 9 yards, nothing, but it's, you want to see a perimeter receiver in here to allow Emeka to move around, because I think that's how you're going to get the best out of him. Just having him run out there as the X, you're going to see a lot of extra defensive attention. You're going to see the most difficult routes here, and I think he's better as a move-around player. And you've seen these missed opportunities like we just showed on the screen here. You've seen these missed opportunities with Baker Mayfield where he has not been consistently accurate during this stretch. So, again, during this kind of part where I think the Bucs season has quietly been eroding, it's been a little bit of this, a little bit of that. It's been a little bit of Baker Mayfield falling off, not playing as hot as he did to start the season. And Baker's a streaky player. You know, I think he's a really good quarterback. He's an answer. He's a guy you can build around, but he is a streaky player. That's just part of it. This is part of the Baker Mayfield experience. So he's been a little bit streakier than he was to start the season. There's been some different injuries along the offensive line, even though Tristan Wirfs is now back now. Graham Barton's not back at his correct position at center. But, you know, no Bucky Irving obviously has been a problem. Mike Evans not being out there that's been a problem. Chris Godwin, you know, in and then he's out again. That's been a problem. Relying on Tez Johnson, relying on Sterling Shepard. I think good role players, but guys who kind of force your wide receiver room into specific problems in terms of, okay, well then Emeka Egbuka has to play X receiver on all these snaps, which I think is great that he has had moments there, but it's not his optimal deployment long term. Like, I think he needs to move around a little bit in order to be the best version of himself, which isn't a dig. I mean, shoot, Puka Nacua needs to do that. Amon-Ra St. Brown needs to do that. All these guys do that. All these top level receivers. That archetype of receiver that I was so enthusiastic to see him fitting into early, they're not lining up at X receiver on 80+% of their snaps and, you know, being able to be doubled and taken away, things of that nature. That's where this receiver room just is right now. So that's been a part of it. It's just, they're on the other side of variance right now, are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And we'll see what happens now going forward. Obviously, Teddy Bridgewater comes in here. Wasn't an impressive outing, but one of the reasons I'm really excited about this Rams team is that defense is badass. And shoot, when you get in a position where the offense on the other side of it for LA is putting up points and then the defense is in attack mode, you're going to get these game scripts where quarterbacks are not having a good time. You're completing 8 of 15 for 62 yards. You're taking 2 sacks. You're losing 21 yards on sacks, as Teddy Bridgewater did tonight. So I think I'm interested in Teddy as a backup quarterback, as a replacement type guy. Could he bring something to this offense? I think it's possible. You know, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's like the easiest backup quarterback spot to project, because Teddy, it's been a minute since we've seen him, you know, start an extended stretch or anything like that. But I'm at least interested to see what he looks like in this offense, especially if they can get healthier at the skill position spots. But if it's Teddy Bridgewater and if this offense continues to function at the efficiency level that we've seen of late, it's just going to be tough. It's going to be really tough for guys like Sean Tucker, who led the backfield tonight with 12 carries, 7 for Rachaad White. It's going to be tough for a guy like that to really pop off in fantasy in the way that you thought. So definitely going to be an interesting race in the NFC South. Now, the Panthers play tomorrow, so that's a big game for them. If they win tomorrow night, the NFC South at least gets interesting. So right now, the New York Times prediction model, their playoff simulator, I don't believe it's like fully updated at this point, but the Bucs at 6-5 have an 80% chance to win the division. The Panthers at 22 or at 20%, 22% to make the playoffs in general. Obviously, they have to win the division. If they win the game tomorrow night, though, that jumps up to 34% that they make the playoffs. 28% chance that they win the division. So it's still a long shot for Carolina. But it is interesting to consider, and what a shame that we're having this conversation about a Bucs team that looked pretty good to start the season.